have been on this theme now for weeks. And the theme or the idea that I'm working with is Genesis 1:26. So if y'all want to just look at it, we have it basically memorized. I know we do, but let's just flip it over there real quick and look at it. And the theme is the soul. That's what I'm talking about, the soul, the image of God. And several things that I want to point out or I want to talk about is the soul, which is pretty much in Christianity, a total misconstrued idea of what it is or what it is not. And most people equate the soul and the spirit is the same thing, and they're not. They're, even though they may appear to be in many cases opposite sides of the same coin, more or less like you could say inseparable, but functions are completely different. So designs are not the same. So spirit stands in itself alone as God, not apart from God, but as God. It tells you that in John. God is spirit. Not that God is spirit and then spirit is something separate. In Christianity we have a three-headed God. In Christianity you have a God the Father, a God the Holy Ghost, and a God Jesus the Son. And in Christianity, when you get to this so-called place called heaven in Christianity, that's what you're going to meet. At least you'll meet God the Father and God the Son. And I'm not sure if what Christianity does with God the Holy Ghost. If God the Holy Ghost can get up there is Mary, or what. I don't know. I remember when I first started studying Christianity, gosh, when I was in my mid-20s, late mid-26, 27, somewhere along in there, I was really confused by the three-God idea. That confused me. And now I see why it did confuse me, because it's nonsense. The whole concept is nonsense. When you see that what God is, especially when you're looking at the Hebrew Scripture and you see what God is, then you've got to rethink a lot of stuff, and it tears down a lot of ideologies, and that's difficult. You go to tearing down ideologies in your head. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't fall easy. They come down kicking and screaming. They did with me, and I had ideologies built in me, not from going to church, because I didn't. When I was very young, a church was across the street from our house, and for some reason, several years, I really enjoyed that, and I would walk across the street and go to church. But my mom and daddy didn't make us go to church, or we didn't get up and go to church a lot. Maybe once or twice a year. We might go to Christmas party or something, or Easter or something. So anyway, when I had my experience and they began to teach me the Christian belief system, it did not make a lot of sense to me to begin with. And so I had a tremendous amount of questions. And then when I felt that I was supposed to be a minister or a preacher or whatever, because I didn't know what that was really, but I thought whatever a preacher does on Sunday morning, that's what a preacher does, and that's what it is. So I thought that's what I would do. I thought that's what I felt God wanted me to do anyway. So I sought around. I knew I couldn't go back to school because I had a brand new baby and two older daughters. So I had three kids, and I couldn't go back to school because I had to support my family. So I found Dake. Somebody got me in touch with Dake, and I became one of Dake's students. I took his seminary course, and then it was a course that you could do through the mail, and it would be equivalent to a college course. So I did that. I was able to do that. It took me maybe a couple of years to complete that course and finish that course. But in that course, I learned all of the traditional beliefs that people learn in Christianity, plus the rapture and the whole Revelation, Ezekiel, Daniel, Jeremiah concept of Christianity. The whole literalist idea. And that never fit well with me. And many times when we would go and do certain classes with Dave, I would ask questions because I didn't understand that. It did not make sense to me. And I would say, okay, then if it's going to be literal, and here was his idea, and he says it right here in the front of the Dake Bible, somewhere. He says the general rule, let's see, the general principle adhered to throughout is that literalizing instead of spiritualizing. That's what he says. He says statements of fact and historical accounts are accepted as such. The rule observed is take the Bible literally, if at all possible. If symbolic or figurative or typical language is used, then look for the literal. That's what they teach. And it's not a literal book. It's a book about spiritual principles. And what we have done to us through this vehicle called the Roman Church or Catholicism, and which is the forefather of the founding father of Christianity. Jesus is not. The stories around Jesus didn't establish that. We think that he did because we think Jesus is the founder of Christianity. That is not true. Anybody can read the four Gospels and see that. But nevertheless, all of those things we have been taught to believe, they taught me, and I didn't embrace them good. So I would ask questions. I'd say, well, Brother Doug, that don't make sense. You tell me to take Jesus literal, and then when I come over in the book of Revelations, Jesus is a four-footed lamb. The lamb stood before the... I said, is that a man or is that a four-footed animal? And then he would get upset. Oh, boy, you ask too many questions. You'll find out when you get to heaven. You don't need to know that now. Now, I thought I did need to know that now. So anyway, when you approach this, most anybody can quote this passage of Scripture. They don't have to look at it. Most anybody can quote it. Verse 26. It says, and the Lord and God said, let us make man in our image. Hebrew says, as our image, and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Now, so there is that basic ideology of God and man without knowing what God is, because again, this word God in Hebrew is Elohim. And the Hebrew word Elohim is plural. So, and actually it's translated that way many, many times in the King James, where they use a small G-O-D with an S on the end of it. Gods. It's used, but yet when you come over into the belief system of Christianity, they try to establish that when you get into a multiplicity of gods, then you're getting into heathenism, or you're getting into paganism, or as they would term it, it's demonic. It's of the devil. So when you take the word Elohim and you really get into the Hebrew and you start to do the research on it, you realize that the Elohim is really referring to what I call the wheel of powers. Wheel of powers. In other words, the 12 astrological wheel. And each one of those 12 segments of that pie is called power. In Hebrew is El. Just the symbol E-L. That's called power. It's also translated as God in a singular sense. But every time you have the word Elohim, it's always plural. It's the multiplicity of powers. In other words, it's the many gods as one God. It's the one wheel that represents 12 facets of that wheel. So, I mean, that's complicated for a person who's got his mind bogged down in Christian belief system, but when you get free from that, or you open your mind to think outside that box and realize that God is a multiplicity of powers or energies, that He's not an old man, He doesn't sit on a throne somewhere out there on a planet in space like we have been taught, that God is everywhere, filling everything all at the same time. And when you got to chew on that, and you begin to smoke that pipe, get that inside you and ingest that, you begin to realize, well, then He ain't sitting out there somewhere. Because it gets very confusing to try to comprehend that, to make it there and here, or make it there and everywhere. You understand? And I realize that the idea behind the Christian belief system is just simply, well, yeah, God the Father sits up there, but then the Spirit's everywhere else. You know, I say, well, okay, then God is Spirit. So the Spirit is God. You follow what I'm saying? It becomes very confusing, but when you start to see that it's not really that confusing, and you look at the whole astrological wheel and you realize that you are a material reflection of that. One of the greatest harms done to us is to separate spirit and matter. That's not Spirit and matter, matter and spirit are one and the self-same thing. One is not something without the other. Without spirit, you would not be here. Without matter, spirit wouldn't be here. They're not separate. You can't separate the spirit from yourself. You can't separate the matter from the spirit. In other words, you can't say God's this and you're not. Because whatever God is, you are. Because you are the visible, physical, material manifestation of that energy, of that essence. That is what breathes us. And I realize, you know, and I have myself grappled with all of these ideas and great questions. Yeah, but God.
Death don't separate them.
I'm sorry?
Death don't separate them.
No, see, death is a misnomer. It's a misunderstood thing. Death is, and again, here I will give you all a book by Alvin Boyd Kuhn. I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the best books that I've ever read about an understanding, a deeper understanding about death, because he spends quite a bit of time in this book, and it's called Who is the King of Glory? It's probably about 300 or 400 page book, but he has got several chapters on death, some of the best exegesis on what death is and what death is really about. Physical decease, the body is a suit you wear. And when you take off that shirt and you lay that shirt down, or you take off that shirt and you wash it, did that shirt die?
No.
Well, the skin that you got on your body that covers you, that's all it is skin. So when you lay it down, did you die? No, you live on. See, that's the problem. See, Christianity wants to offer you this concept of a gift of eternal life. That don't exist. Just like the words, I did a teaching 6 months ago or longer, that everlasting and eternal are not even in the New Testament. They just do not exist. They're just not. Those are made up words. Those are English words that we have tried to put in place of timelessness. God is in timelessness and time at the same time. How's that possible? Well, it is. It's possible. And so anyway, this word image, Tesla, that's the Hebrew word for the word image, Tesla. Tesado Lamid with the final mem. And so I'm going to talk a lot about the mems this morning, or quite a bit. The final mem, and then the mem single, 40, so number 40. I'll talk quite a bit about them. You can't talk about the mems. They are water. They represent water. And when you look at Genesis chapter 1, the first half of this is about water. At least the first 8 or 10 verses, 12 verses, are about water. And it's just in there over and over and over. And so when we get to see that you are water. That's what we're made up of, that we're water vessels. And part of the gift of the soul is to move into this water vessel and build it. And it does, because it has, the soul comes like with an architectural print of what a human body is like. And at conception, all of that information is in the soul. And it's all within that little, it's that quartz. What do they call it? Quark? What is that word? Something when they found that atom wasn't the smallest thing. I think is it quarks, something like that. I forget the word. Yeah. It's something like that. But and then when they reduce it down, they can't find anything there. But yet they know that that's there. So now, even in quantum science, now they don't separate spirit from matter. And they're not saying there's no such thing as spirit. Because you read some of the more up-to-date material on quantum science, and you begin to realize, wow, they're not separating spirit and matter. They realize one is not one without the other. They're basically a reflection of one. Nothing reflects something. And that's difficult, because we think, how can nothing reflect anything? But when you reduce an atom down where you can't find there's anything there, but yet there's something there. So they call it nothing, or no thing. So anyway, the Tesada, which is the first glip in this word teslim, actually the Tesada in Hebrew means female energy. Female energy. And actually this energy, the female energy, draws life from movement. And movement is the first thing of the material world. That's the first, that's life. Life is movement. Without movement, there's no life. So how do you get movement? You get movement from the sine, S-I-N-E, wave, which creates the seasons of the year, the wobble of the earth, and we call it time. So, and you can all reduce all that down to find, you can realize that really what sin is time. It's time. You think it's something you did wrong. And that's what Christianity wants you to do. When it says in Psalms, I think Psalm 64, talking about David, says, he was shapen and conceived in iniquity and born in sin. And they told you that on one place in the Bible, Psalm 64. The word shapen in iniquity, actually the word iniquity means fall short of a cycle. To fall short of a cycle. And so the word cycle is, all right, that's a complete cycle. Now, if I do this, and I cut this out, I'll just do it like that since I put it up here. I take this out. That's not a complete cycle. You understand? That's what it's referring to in Psalms. It's referring to you were shapen in iniquity. In other words, you were shapen in the womb of your mother in an incomplete cycle. In other words, you didn't finish the complete 12 rounds. That completes a cycle. Can you follow that? Or at least entertain that thought. We'll look at that some more maybe. I think we can. And I'll put this back up here now. We'll look at that some more. So that's what the word tesada, the Hebrew word tesada. It just simply means female energy that's derived from movement. And then the next word is the lamid, which has a 30 value. 30 value, remember Jesus was 30 to enter ministry. 30 actually means to be mature. It means to be teachable. It means to be a teacher. So the lamid, which is the tallest glyph in the Hebrew alphabet, it means to teach or to be open. You can sit in class and you can't learn if you're not open. Why? Because you'll argue. You'll argue with yourself. You ever argued with yourself? I have. Yeah, you'll argue, yeah, but, you know, you ever got those yeah buts? I mean, I have been probably the world's worst at yeah buts. Because it's hard for me sometimes to swallow something or to be convinced about something. I'm not from Missouri. But I still would like to know. I mean, you know, inquiring minds do want to know. I would like to have more than just believe it. You know, in my school, hell no, I'm not just going to believe you.
That's how my brother and I sometimes answer the phone with each other. Yeah, but.
Well, Christianity has taught us to be gullible. They've taught us to leave our brain out there in the car when we come through those magical doors into the sanctuary of God, the holy place, the church. There you believe what the preacher says. I mean, whatever he says behind that sacred desk, the pulpit, that's what he's doing. He's pulling people from the pit. That's supposed to be sanctified and holy in everything he said. And everything he said is bull. Sad to say that because that's what he's taught. I'm not disrespecting. I don't want to be disrespectful to the man or the woman or the person. But they have all been a part of the cookie cutters. You know, snap them out. You got to believe it. You have to just have faith. Have blind faith. That's what they tell you. And they tell you if you do that, then God's really happy with you. I don't find that to be true. I don't find that to be the truth. I find that God is very reasonable and can be proved both logically and literally. So, and I found that with these words, these different Hebrew glyphs and studying and understanding these glyphs. So the lamid, this is how this word tesada, this is what this word tesada, lamid, and then the last one is final mem. Put those three together, put vowel points in between them, and you have a Hebrew word called teslim. But without the vowel points, this is what you get. Female energy. That female energy is open, it's progressive, it's teachable, it learns, and then the final mem simply means it's fertilized by water. That's what the image is. Or that's what it means when it says that you were made as God's image. So you put those together, that's a capsule of the image of what? Of God. Ask God. Then you come to the word God and you get Elohim. You get this, you get the Elohim, the 12 astrological signs. There you go, the 12 pieces of the pie. Astrology, zoology, it's the same thing. It's saying the same thing. And so we'll look at a lot about that. So I want to read you some notes here. And in these notes, I'm going to point out some things. The masters knew so much about the science of man that they listed the 4 kingdoms on which man's existence rests. 4 kingdoms that man's existence rests. Or in other words, I could say it this way, the 4 kingdoms from which man is built. And there, right here are the 4 kingdoms. This goes in so many different ways. 3, 4, 7, 12. You know, you can say, but those are all different numbers. They're all different numbers, but when you get into the esoteric or the inward teaching, or you get into typology, mythology, astrology, all of those numbers mean the same thing. All of those numbers are in here, and all of those numbers mean the whole, the complete cycle. And I'll try to break that down. So again, let me say this. The masters knew so much about the science of man that they listed the 4 kingdoms on which man's existence rests. And so here's that's why you have 4 gospels. I mean, that's why that you see this so many places in Scripture, in Ezekiel, in Revelations, in Daniel. This is what you'll see. These are the 4 kingdoms. That's the first one. This is the second one. That's the cardinal cross. I might as well make it like this. This is the third one. And that's the fourth one. This is also the same. This is not any different from Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. That word Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, in Hebrew, we put vowel points and call it Jehovah. In Hebrew, it's a formula. It's the formula of fire, air, earth, and water. It's that formula. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. It just goes on. So those are the 4 kingdoms. So when I say this, the science of man, and all nations knew this science. This was not something that was concocted. This is something everybody knew. That man existed on these four corners. We call them 4 corners. And if I did it this way and made corners out of them, if I did it like that, and you look at an aerial view of it, you could look down on it and you could say it's a pyramid. And of course, you know, the dimensions of the pyramid have been researched and studied. There's so much material, so much information on the dimensions of the pyramid and how the pyramid aligns both the astrological wheel and the earth by its dimensions together as one thing, one gigantic movement. So see, there's just so much. This is not something concocted by pagans. This is not something that was concocted by cavemen because they had nothing else to do but beat their life and look at the sky. It's ridiculous what we come. So here we have, on this corner right here, all of you know this is Taurus, this is the bull or the ox. And the bull or the ox, if you go into the scriptures, the bull or the ox is actually called the servant, and it's the Gospel of Mark. Matter of fact, many Bibles, many study Bibles, many reference Bibles up at the heading on top of the page, like does the Date Bible, it'll tell you Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It'll tell you what that book is about, or it'll tell you one of these 4 kingdoms that the theme of that book is about. Even though you look at Matthew and Mark and Luke, somewhat called the Synoptic Gospel, you say, yeah, they kind of have the same theme. And then they throw John in to give them a curve because they couldn't. John's not that way. But you have the synoptic gospel, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that are pretty well saying on certain ways the same story, but they're really not. Mark, the Gospel of Mark, is about the servant. In other words, it typifies Jesus as the servant to mankind. And that's basically what the Gospel of Mark does, and it says Jesus came to serve humanity. Okay? Then when you come over, that's the ox. That's what this is. This is Taurus in the astrological wheel. And you come over here to this corner, this second kingdom, and this kingdom represents Matthew because it starts out Jesus the King. And so what is Leo is called the lion, and what is the lion? So he's the king. So here's Matthew. Then you come down here to this corner, and you come to Scorpio. Scorpio also in a lot of different astrological wheels, Scorpio is the eagle. It represents the air, that which flies. So this is the Gospel of John. And then you come over here to this corner, the fourth kingdom, and this is Aquarius, and this represents the Gospel of Luke. Luck. Luke or Luck. Gospel of Luke. Well, I don't want to spell it right, do it? And the Gospel of Luke represents man, which that's what the sign of Aquarius is. Now you could say, well, that's an accident, or that's just a coincidence. And I say, absolutely, you're right. That is a coincidence. It's not there by accident. It's not there by mistake. Taurus is the bull or the ox. That's what Mark's about. Leo the lion is the king of the beast. That's what Matthew's about. Sagittarius the eagle, the Gospel of John, that's exactly what the Gospel of John is about. And you can go to the book of Daniel, you can go to the book of Ezekiel, and you'll find the wheel inside the wheel. That's what this is. This is a wheel and a wheel. And then you come over to Luke, Aquarius. What is called Aquarius? He's the man bearing the pitcher of water. Luke represents the man. So those are not accidents. Those are on purpose, and they're there. So when you look at it that way, those are the four kingdoms. Now I want to do one other thing while I'm just right here at this point, and I want to do it this way. I want to come out here a little bit further, and used to, even further back, you go further back, if you go way further back, you'll find there wasn't 4 seasons. There wasn't spring, summer, autumn, and winter, fall and winter. There wasn't. There were 3 seasons. And the seasons then were spring and summer and winter. And of course, if you put that on the astrological wheel, fits perfectly. So there's your 3: Father, Spirit, Son. Everything's built on that. So you got 3, and in Hebrew you have 3. You have what's called 3 mothers. 3 mothers, that's just one. Here's your 3 mothers: Father, Spirit, Son. That's your 3 seasons. But you see, they're all one, right? So you wonder, well, where's 3 and 1? Right there. It's 3 and 1 in that wheel of powers. That's Elohim, 12 in 1. It's the same thing. You follow? So in Hebrew you have 3 mothers, and then you have 7 what's called doubles. And the reason they do 7 doubles is simply because of this is the stick man. This is you. And you can take a woman who is just full term, and I mean that belly stretched out there huge and massive, and you can look at it, and this is exactly how you're built. You are your own helpmate. You are 2 in 1. The 7 doubles in Hebrew represents the duality of man, spirit, matter. heavenly, earthly. And you are. I mean, that's why you got a right leg and left leg, right arm, left leg, right lung, left leg, two sides of the hemisphere brain, two eyeballs, etc., etc. So when you stretch that body out real tight, you realize it's seen right down the middle of the thing. That's just a medical, biological fact, okay? So those are the 7 doubles in Hebrew. And those 7 Hebrew glyphs or 7 Hebrew letters represent this aspect of the human body. And then the last one that you have are called the 12 elementals. 12 elementals. So you have 7, 10, 12, you have 22, and that's exactly how many numbers you have in the Hebrew alphabet, with an additional 5 finals represent your physical senses. 22 numbers. So all three of these doubles, these mothers, all 7 of these doubles, and all 12 of these elementals are found right here in this one wheel of power called the Elohim. And so is the word Lord, found right here, same thing. L-O-R-D. All right, so let me read on here. Oh well, let me just do this while I'm right here, real quickly. These 3 mothers, because I'm going to work with these 3 mothers. This is the Aleph, and this is the Mem, and this is the Shin. Okay? Do that a little better. That's the Shin. So you have the Aleph, number 1, that's God. The Mem, number 40, that's water. And the Shin, number 300, is fire. So you have air, spirit, right? God is spirit. Air, right? Ruach, breath, right? Air. You have Mem, water. And then you have Shin, fire. So you have air, water, and fire with the earth. There you go. That's all the same thing. So these 4 corners of the zodiac, the ancient astrological 12-spoke wheel of powers. In other words, that's the Hebrew Elohim, the gods. It is thought that the ancient masters prepared the zodiacal wheel as a secret. And I've had people ask me this for years and years. Why is all this stuff secret? Why are these things hid? And I want to try to bring a little bit of clarity to that. I realize that's real muddy water, but nevertheless, I want to try to bring a little bit of clarity to that, understanding to it, because our minds have been so darkened for 1,700 years because of literalism. Basically, the Roman Church. And it don't take a lot today, but when you got the computer, you've got plenty of access. You can find out anything I'm saying to be true or false. You can find out if I'm a false prophet or if what I'm saying is the truth. It's not hard. It is thought that the ancient masters prepared the zodiacal wheel as a secret, but the truth be made known, it was common knowledge. It was studied day by day. My thinking is that it was available to all people in all places every day of existence, just exactly like it is today. There's not, just like it tells you, Psalms 19. Psalms 19 tells you very clearly, there is not a nation, a people, a language, a tongue on this earth that the astrological wheel doesn't touch them and speak to them every day. That's Psalms 19, 1 and 2. All you have to do is read it. And it tells you very clearly, there's not a language on the earth that doesn't hear the energy of this wheel. And speaking in that energy, that movement is speaking. So it was a secret. Here's the problem with it. Here's the truth of it is all nations understood it in their own language and in their own stories. Even though their stories may be told singularly with different names. If the story was told about Krishna, who was born of a virgin, who went in ministry at 30, who died at a certain age and was the Savior of mankind, it's told to that nation in that language. Or if it's told about Buddha, same identical story, but never ever referring to a literal character. Always knew it was a mythological character. Why? Because it meant you. Or then you come to the story of Jesus. I mean, you know, there is a book by, gosh, what's her name? She died here about a couple of years ago. Oh, her name is D.M. Murdoch. D.M. Murdoch. Phenomenal book. She's got a book on the, I think the title of it is the 36 Crucified Saviors. 36. She really gets extensive on it. 36. D.M. Murdoch. You can find on her webpage. Her webpage and all of her books are still available. You know, she has one book. It's about 500 or 600 pages thick. Phenomenal book. Says, "Was Moses real?" She'll blow you mind. She was a phenomenal writer. So it was available to all people in all places every day of existence. And here is the reason it was taught and thought of as a secret. It's because the information was inside you. You have it, but you don't know it. Now, if you don't know it, is it a secret? To you it is. But if you begin to know it, you go begin looking inside, and what you're going to do is you're going to find whatever's in here, inside you, is out there. That's why the old ancient aphorism, know yourself, and you will know the gods. Above the temple, man, know thyself. And nobody ever gets that last phrase, and you will know the gods. As above, so below. As without, so within. So we are a reflection of that. That's the image of God. That's who we are. It's not who we're going to be. It's who we are. We don't know how to live from that position. We don't know how to express that. Why? Well, because, you know, we're taught, especially in America, especially in this nation, and in Christianity around the world, we're taught, number one, we come here as a sinner. So we fall short to start out with. We didn't realize we were whole, complete, and perfect, just like we are. And we create our own chaos out of ignorance. Just exactly like it tells you in the book of Isaiah and Hosea. People perish or are held in captivity because of the lack of knowledge, because of ignorance. It's not because they're bad or because they're wicked or because they did this or did that or whatever. Everybody's doing this and that. Whatever this and that is. But what separates us from being free and from being in bondage is knowledge. And where's the knowledge at? It's inside you. It's inside me. And it's a deposit there. The information is in the soul. It knows. It has all of that imprint in it, but it's not going to force it on you. God's not going to knock you down and say, I'm going to get over top of you. Bless God, you're going to learn this. I'm going to shove this down in you. It don't happen. It don't ever happen to anybody. I know people have profound experiences, and that's wonderful. I've heard of people saying, well, God just took my cigarettes. Well, I said, that's just wonderful. You, bless God, He didn't take mine. It was a long, drawn-out, hard process of me walking the difficult road. And I'm sure God does it for different people according to wherever they are. Where I was at, I had to battle it day by day by day by day. And it wasn't easy. You know, at that time, I had smoked from probably the time I was 5, 6, 7. I snuck and smoked because my big brother put me up to it until I was, 33, 34, and I finally quit, put them down. Anyway, so the idea of it being secret knowledge is because the Roman Church did everything it could to destroy this ancient wisdom and thereby rob humanity from this wisdom in order that they might disempower humankind from their relationship with their true God. In other words, the zodiacal wheel of powers. In other words, the Elohim. Or in other words, their true self with a capital S-E-L-F. The wheel of powers taught humankind about his or her relationship with it. In other words, with the gods, and about his or herself. Thus, the phrase, and above the temple of Delphi, know yourself and you will know the gods. By studying the zodiac or astrological wheel of powers, we begin to understand the origin of the spirit monads and comprehend the cycles of involution of the involution of the gods. You know, involution. God coming into you. David asked about death. Death is where God surrenders itself to come into you. What is it surrendering? It's surrendering all of its infinite abilities. Why? Because it becomes finite, i.e. limited to you, limited to your base of knowledge, but still all powerful. That's why it's so hard to break and shake an addiction, because it's powerful. Why? Because God empowers you. God empowers you to destroy yourself. Now, isn't that a misnomer? But it's the truth. It's the truth. How do you break that? You break that by knowledge, by recognizing, by realizing, here's what I am. Here's who I am.
Yes.
The will of power is taught humankind about his or her relationship with it, the astrological wheel, and with their self, because they are, you are, I am a reflection of what it is. So you will, by studying the zodiac or the astrological wheels of power, you begin to understand the origin of the spirit monads and comprehend the cycles of involution of the gods to mankind and the evolution of mankind back to God. You hear that? You came from God into a physical body, limited. And now then, it's your turn to evolve. Is evolution true? Absolutely. But what is evolution about? It's not that you come from a monkey. You see, when Adam, if you look at Genesis chapter 4, you'll have basically four breaks. Genesis chapter 1, you'll have basically four breaks in it. You have first the creation of the plants, the grass, the herbs, the trees, the fruits, etc. You have all of those. Then the second phase you'll have is the fowl of the air and the fish of the sea. And then the third phase you'll have is the animal kingdom of every animal that there exists. And then the fourth phase that you'll have is mankind, the resemblance, the reflection of what God is. Then in Genesis chapter 2 you have this thing where all of a sudden God says, now Adam, you name them. And we thought Adam stood up there and he said, I'm going to call that a bird. That's a hawk, that's a chicken, that's a da-da-da, that's a duck. And he's got up there and named them, oh, that's a giraffe. No, in Hebrew it says very clearly, if you begin to study, you realize, God says, yes, that's herb, that's grass, that's not what I am. Yes, that's fowl, that's fish, that's birds, that's not what I am. Yes, that's an animal, that's this, that's that. That's not what I am. I did not evolve from a monkey. He made everything after its own kind. And that's the end. The only thing you can do is you can crossbreed certain animals. Like for instance, if you want a mule, you breed a horse and a jackass. But a mule can never breed a mule and get a mule. It's the end of the line. It don't cross over. It don't cross over. A gorilla cannot inbreed a woman and create anything. It just don't happen. It just don't happen. And that's what Adam was saying. Adam was saying, yes, all of those are creations. Yes, I made up the same thing as the grass, the herbs, the trees, the fruit bearing. Yes, I made up the same thing as the fish, the fowl, the air. Yes, I made up the same thing as the birds. But I'm not that. I'm this. I mean, my God, that would be enough to make a man want to shout and run. So they knew how the fate of mankind would ebb and flow, the mystery of the tide in and out, between light and dark. They knew the secret in the movement of the moon, the sun, the stars, and the earth. They knew astronomy through its astrological expression, and they were given the golden key. And that golden key was the secret is in you. So when you're looking for the secret, where are you going to look for it? Look within. Jesus said this, don't go down there looking for the kingdom. Don't go over yonder looking for the kingdom. Don't go up in the sky looking for the kingdom. Don't go down in the water looking for the kingdom. Where are you going to look for it at? Right beside you. That's exactly where it's at. That's where God said, that's where I put it. It's inside of you. The kingdom is within you. So we go to church looking for it. We go a lot of places looking for it. It's not there. Let me read you something here from this little book. It says, in the tomb of Ramsay, who lived 3,500 years ago, there was found a massive circle of wrought gold, divided into 365 degrees. And each division marked the rising and the setting of the stars of each day. According to Champollion, the tomb of Ramses V at Thebes contained tablets of the constellation and of their influence on man for every hour of every day of every month of every year. Now I wonder where those tablets is at right now. The Egyptian masters taught that a mutual dependence existed between all things in the universe ruled by one law, including a mysterious relationship between the spirits of the stars and the souls of men. The destiny of mortals was regulated by the motions of the heavenly bodies, just as the moon rules the ebb and flow of the tides. From the conjunction of the planets at the hour of birth, they prophesied what would be the temperament of an infant, what life it would likely live, and what death it would likely die. These masters, 10,000 years ago, knew the shape and the movement of the earth, how to calculate solar and lunar eclipses. They foretold with remarkable accuracy what was about to happen to mankind, the failure or abundance of crops. By means of their long-continued observation, they foresaw earthquakes, deluges, rising of comets, and all of the phenomena, the knowledge of which appears impossible to common comprehension today. Yet modern scientists attempt to discredit this wisdom of the masters by asserting they knew nothing of the laws of physiology. Then something happened. All this mighty wisdom came to an abrupt end in the 4th century at 326 AD, when the cosmic science and philosophy and temples of the masters were ruthlessly destroyed and new order of darkness was born. Now, reading between the lines, what in the world do you think he's talking about? Well, I will tell you exactly what happened. Constantine, the emperor of Rome, who had boiled his mother in water or in oil to kill her, who had ruthlessly murdered his wife and had killed his own son, he became the conqueror and the king of this thing called Christianity. It was birthed under him there in 326 and called the Nicene Council at the Nicene Creed. And that stands as the 12 foundational truths of Christianity. Neither one of those 12 foundational so-called truths are in Scripture. And yet every Christian has been taught to believe those 12. And you can go to most Christian churches, they'll have it on the back wall, our covenant. And you can read it, 1, 2, 3, 4, if they hold to the Nicene Creed. Now if they hold to the Apostolic Creed, they're going to have 14 of those covenants on instead of 12. We believe, we believe, we believe. And we're all taught. And we stand on that. Knowing, I mean, anybody know, you know good and well, you go back and find one of the greatest libraries that ever existed known to mankind was the Alexandrian Library. And what happened to it? The Christian church under Constantine's rule went down and destroyed that library. Look at the temples all around the earth, whether you go down to Mexico or down to South America, to Pumapuca or to the Mayan ruins down in Mexico. Go down there and look what the Catholic Church did. They went throughout the earth plundering and destroying and stealing information and burning it up. That's what they said. Or did they take it and hide it in the Vatican Library? My idea is they took it and put it in the Vatican Library. I mean, to me, it's just a phenomenal thing to be alive today and how at your fingertips. I'm really slow when it comes to computers. It took me 4 hours yesterday, 4 hours to change my email address on my Amazon account from Lynn Hayes at charter.net to Lynn Hayes 007 gmail.com. It took me 4 hours to do that. I mean, that was a struggle, a laborious thing. And I bet you any one of y'all could probably say, I'll do it in a minute. So I'm not computer savvy, but I'll tell you what, at your fingertips, this information is available to anybody and everybody. And kids now are getting it. Kids don't buy this lie hardly anymore, that this Roman church has deceived the whole world. You know, and for 1,000 years, it used to be taught in the schools when I was a child, it was taught the 1,000 years of darkness. I think that's been removed from the history books now. The Catholic Church would like to have all that removed. You know, they would like for you not to know why that the Pope stepped down. You know, just like this one that's in tremendous question and under tremendous scrutiny because of all of the things that's going on in the Catholic Church with the rape of children. I mean, where is people at? I mean, where is this thing called Christianity at with its head in the sand? Not willing to dig its head out of the sand and just look and smell the coffee and smell the roses. Whew, doggy. I mean, you know, I get a little over passionate about that because it croaks me a lot. I mean, you know, when you see what happened, I mean, anybody knows that from 326 plumb up to past the Wittenberg printing press, 1213, 1400, when they began to print material, and then all of the Catholic Church went to war against Europe. You know that. I mean, it's in history. It's just written everywhere. They literally killed millions of people if they bought a Bible. Catholic Church did that. And then you had your Inquisitions. The Inquisitions was a court that before you were called there, if you were called there, you were fixing to get killed. You knew that. You're going to be boiled in oil, burned at the cross of stakes, or hung, or your head cut. That was just... Why? Because you decided you wasn't going to believe the way they believed, you know, and they would not let you study the human body. They ruled the world up until, gosh, what, 15th, 16th, 17th century, and then people began to break out of that. The Renaissance birthed that, 1300s, through the Renaissance, and I'm thinking the Renaissance is still going on, and I'm thinking there is a new Renaissance in our time, in our age, where we're shaking up. It's being shook up and saying, look, I'm not going to buy that anymore. But I want to, let me just hurry up and finish. I'm going to read you some other things here that I wrote. Number one is we have to know that we have been purposed. Isaiah tells you that. Isaiah 14, 24 through 27 says very clearly, you have been purposed. God purposed. God designed you with purpose. You know what? Most of us don't know that. Most of them haven't got a clue. They don't know that I have been designed with a purpose. But yes, we have been designed with a purpose. And so if you will go with me to the book of John, the Gospel of John, John chapter 3, and I'll give you a couple things here that you can look at, think about, chew on. John chapter 3. And again, these things are not things that you don't know, but you may have not heard them in the light that I'd like to share them. John chapter 3. And verse 3. John chapter 3 and verse 3. Jesus answered and he said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born again. Now, Christianity dealt was really a good one on this one because of the translation. Born, actually, here in the Greek, is the Greek word geneo, and it actually means to be conceived, or it means to be procreated, to be conceived or procreated, okay? The word again is the Greek word anothen, A-N-O-T-H-E-N, anothen, and actually it means to be born from the first, or to be born from above. Now, if you'll look at those two words, born again, what I just said, definitions, doesn't fit the ideas you've been told. And I know that. Because the idea you've been told was, when you come of the age of accountability, whatever age that they think that is, because they make it vary, you know. In other words, they make it very to where when you come of an age where you're convicted that what you did was wrong, or something like that, then it's time for you to get born again. Now, that's Protestant church. All Protestant churches pretty much teach that. You have some probably Greek Orthodox churches, Lutherans, maybe not beyond that. Greek Orthodox Lutherans, maybe they baptized you when you were an infant and you were born again. You remember? Right, the three. You were born again. That's pure Catholicism, right? Most people know that. That's the Roman Church, pure Catholicism. So, what do these terms mean? Born again. Actually, to be conceived from above. To be conceived from above. So, I've got so much on that wheel, I'm going to put another one right here. And I want to talk about this being conceived from above. Be conceived from above. And you've seen me do this, but let me try to do it fairly quickly. And to be conceived, okay, you have Aquarius, you have Taurus, you have Gemini. Aquarius, Taurus, and Gemini, the twins. So this is March, April, and May, and June. Okay? And then you have Pisces, you have Aquarius, and Capricorn. I'm going to use myself. Okay? I was born right here on February the 19th. That puts me right on the cuff between Aquarius and Pisces. So, in order for me to find out when I was conceived, please, this is important. If you can get this, man, this will transform your world. You really should. I have to count back 40 weeks. I have to count backwards 40 weeks to find out when did Mama and Daddy make love and Daddy release his seed. Because in the release of my father's seed, when he ejaculated, 250 to 300 million seeds were released. And only one out of that. Can you hear that? Out of 250 to 300 million possibilities, you are. I mean, you got to know God has a plan for you. God has a plan for you. Well, that, when you count back 40 weeks or 7 days to a week, 280 days. Just count it right back. And on mine comes right back to May the 21st. Right on the cuff between Taurus and Gemini. So Daddy released the seed. Looks something like that. So small it can't be seen. He released that seed. That seed's made up of 3 ingredients. And that seed came in to my mom, into her womb. Right here. The basic ingredient of this seed is water. And that's why I use that. That's the symbol for water. If you get into symbology or mythology, an upside down pyramid is the symbol for water. And the reason it is because the water pulls to the lowest point. It's just that way. So then, from that conception point of time, I gestated. I was being built. Now, if I look at this word born again, that word born, geneo, actually means to procreate or to conceive. So this is when I was born, okay? Now, look at this word again right here in verse 3. It's the Greek word anothen, okay? Look over here in chapter 1 at verse 35. Just real quickly, I'll show you what they do with things. Because what do you think of when you hear a word again in your mind? What's an English thing that you think of again? If I said...
Repeat.
Absolutely. Look at this word here in verse 35. Chapter 1 of John, verse 35. It says, again, the next day. That word again is palin. Now, wait a minute. The word again here in verse 35 is palin. The word again over here in verse 3 of chapter 3 is anothen. Palin and othen, both of them translated again. I mean, is somebody messing with me or what? You know what this word over here, palin, means? It means exactly what Kirby just said. Again, do it again, repeat it, do it over. Now, when you read that over here in verse 3 of chapter 3, and you read the word again, that's exactly what you're thinking. Get born over. Why? Because you think your first one wasn't enough? Your first one was all you needed. It is the one, it's you. And just like the disciples, they got confused. They said, well, we don't understand this. Are we going to crawl back up in mama and come back out a grown man? How's that going to happen? Hello? We don't think. We do not think. I remember when they told me this at 25, 26, 27, it didn't fit with me because I kept thinking, how am I going to do that? How am I going to crawl back up in mama and come back out? And this time come out the right way or better way or whatever. It's translations or it's misunderstanding in the very things it means to be conceived here. Well, this is when I was conceived, was when my daddy released his seed. And the wheels of power began to take that seed, and along with that seed came the soul. And this is basically a water vessel. Okay? And then it gestates. For 9 months it gestates. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the 9th month, God said, it's time for you to leave the garden. I come out of the garden, and all of a sudden, I come out of the womb, and what's the first thing that happens?
Take a breath.
Had to take a breath. If I didn't breathe, I didn't live. Well, what was the breath? I'm filled with the Spirit. What is the breath? A ruach. Isn't that what it tells you very clearly? It tells you the ruach is the breath. It is the Spirit. So go with me to Genesis chapter 1 again, and I'm going to try to close and quit. But let me, while you're here, John, real quickly, before you go any further, let me just show you this. Verse 5, Jesus answered, verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born of water. Here we go. Water. What does it say? Verse 5, except a man be born of water and what? Spirit. You see, that's who you are. You're the image. You're the reflection of what God is. You're born of water and spirit. Except a man be born of water and a spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. Actually means he can't comprehend the kingdom of God. Verse 7, marvel not that I said unto you, you must be born again. In other words, you must be conceived from above. Verse 8, the wind blows where it lists, and you can't hear the sound. You cannot tell where it comes from and where it's going. So is everyone that's born of the Spirit. Now go with me to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2. And I'm just going to cut it real short right here. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2, it says, and the earth was without form and void. Actually, this word was without is actually, the word here is actually the earth became. And actually, Dave did a phenomenal teaching on this particular verse and this teaching. The earth became. Actually, it says it became tohu and bohu. And those words in Hebrew, tohu, T-O-H-U, and bohu, B-O-H-U, tohu actually and bohu together means it became a massive creative element. In other words, it is swirling with energy. I mean, it's just the idea behind these words. If you can look at small, shallow places of water that's filled with thousands and thousands of minnows that have just birthed, and they're just, you know what I'm saying? They just stirring the water up. It just, I mean, it's just a, that's what that word tahu and bohu. It's just so filled with creativity. They translated tahu and bohu, and you know how the theologians translate that? Waste and void. It's not a waste and void. It is, the earth is so abundantly created. Have you ever noticed there's always more than enough grass? Kirby,
Yeah.
especially when you have a rainy season. Yeah, I mean, you know, 250 to 300 million seed to get to one, more than enough. I mean, that's God, more than enough. I mean, and this is what it said. Notice it said, there it became Tahu and Bohu, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the spirit of Ruach, breath of God, moved upon the face of the waters. This is the word for waters. Mem, Yod, Mem. That's the Hebrew word for waters. That's 40 value. 10, 600. Okay? That's the word for waters. This is the word for waters. It's Mem. Mem, Yod, Mem. Maim. Maim. Look here. Mem, Yod, Mem. And you just add something. This is fire. This is spirit. That's the Hebrew Shin. This word right here in Hebrew is the word for heaven. So when you really begin to look at heaven, you begin to realize you are the material manifestation of heaven on earth.